She's just a maid. My sister mocked me at her luxury wedding, then the hotel owner ran straight to me. Have you ever watched someone get humiliated in front of hundreds of people, only to see that same person become the most powerful one in the room just a few minutes later? Tonight's story is exactly that. It's a story about pride, family, betrayal, and a truth so shocking that it turned a dream wedding into the most unforgettable day of everyone's lives. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. New York City was glowing under the lights of another beautiful evening, but nowhere was brighter than the Grand Plaza, the city's most luxurious five-star hotel. Every inch of the grand ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers, elegant white roses, and golden decorations. Luxury cars lined the entrance as some of the wealthiest people in the city stepped onto the red carpet, dressed in expensive designer suits and glamorous gowns. This wasn't just another wedding. It was the social event everyone had been talking about for months. The bride, Jessica, was living the dream she had always imagined. She wore a breathtaking custom-made wedding gown that looked as if it had come straight from a royal palace. Cameras followed her every move while guests surrounded her with endless compliments. This wedding is absolutely incredible. Only Jessica could pull off something this extravagant. It feels like we're attending a celebrity wedding. Jessica smiled proudly at every compliment. She loved being the center of attention. She loved knowing that everyone admired her success, her beauty, and her luxurious lifestyle. But while all eyes were fixed on the bride, almost no one noticed the young woman standing quietly near the back of the ballroom. Her name was Emily. She wasn't wearing a designer dress. She wasn't covered in expensive jewelry. She wore a simple black dress, her hair neatly tied back, and there were visible signs of exhaustion on her face. Anyone looking at her for only a second would probably assume she worked for the hotel. And in a way, they would be right. Emily was the event supervisor at the Grand Plaza. For the past several weeks, she had worked day and night to make sure every detail of this wedding was perfect. Every flower arrangement, every table setting, every light, every schedule, she had personally overseen it all. While everyone else celebrated, Emily had been working. She quietly checked on the catering staff, helped the waiters organize the dinner service, and made sure every guest received exactly what they needed. No one applauded her. No one thanked her. She wasn't looking for attention anyway. She simply believed that hard work spoke louder than words. But there was something no guest knew. Emily wasn't just another hotel employee. She was the bride's younger sister. Life had never treated the two sisters equally. Jessica always seemed to receive everything she wanted. The best schools. The best clothes. The best opportunities. She grew up believing that the world existed to serve her. Emily's life had been very different. When their father passed away years earlier, everything changed overnight. Their mother became seriously ill, and medical bills kept piling up month after month. Emily quietly gave up her own dreams. She postponed college. She worked double shifts. She accepted every overtime assignment she could find. Every paycheck she earned went toward keeping her mother alive. She never complained. She never blamed anyone. She simply carried the burden in silence. Meanwhile, Jessica built a glamorous life for herself, rarely asking how her younger sister was managing or whether their mother needed anything. Over time, the distance between the sisters became impossible to ignore. Still, Emily never stopped hoping. As she looked around the magnificent ballroom that evening, a small part of her believed that today could be different. Maybe Jessica would finally treat her like family. Maybe years of misunderstanding could finally come to an end. Maybe, just for one night, they could be sisters again. Emily smiled softly as she watched the guests enjoying themselves. She whispered to herself, "I just want her to be happy." She truly meant it. Even after everything that had happened between them. But sometimes, The people we love the most become the ones who hurt us the deepest. As Emily finished speaking with one of the hotel staff members, she noticed movement across the ballroom. Jessica was walking directly toward her. Several of her wealthy friends followed behind, laughing among themselves. The closer they came, the more uncomfortable Emily felt. Jessica wasn't smiling with kindness. It was the kind of smile that usually meant trouble. Emily straightened her dress and forced a gentle smile. "Congratulations, Jessica," she said quietly. "You look beautiful." For a brief second, Jessica simply stared at her. Then she looked Emily up and down from head to toe. A slow smirk spread across her face. The music continued playing. The guests kept talking. No one realized that within the next few moments, one cruel sentence would change everything. Jessica's eyes slowly traveled from Emily's worn black dress to her simple shoes before a mocking smile appeared on her face. "Oh, Emily," she said loudly enough for the people nearby to hear. "You actually came wearing that?" Several guests turned their heads. Jessica folded her arms and laughed. "You honestly look like one of the hotel maids." "Wait, maybe that's because you practically are one." Her wealthy friends burst into laughter. Emily forced herself to smile politely. "I just wanted to congratulate you," she said softly. But Jessica wasn't finished. She stepped even closer, making sure everyone around them could hear every word. "So tell me, are you here as my guest, or are you planning to help clean up after the reception? Maybe the staff is short tonight." The laughter grew louder. One woman covered her mouth as she giggled. Another guest whispered, "I didn't even realize they were sisters." Jessica shrugged dramatically. "I know, it's embarrassing, isn't it? People always ask how someone like her could possibly be related to me." Emily lowered her eyes. Every word felt like another knife twisting into her heart. She wanted to disappear. Not because of the expensive guests. Not because of the cameras. But because the person humiliating her wasn't a stranger. It was her own sister. Jessica continued as if she were performing on stage. "You know what's funny? Emily has worked at this hotel for years, but she'll probably never be able to afford even one night here as a guest." Another wave of laughter swept through the ballroom. Emily felt hundreds of eyes staring at her. She could feel the heat rising in her face. Her hands trembled slightly, but she clasped them together so no one would notice. She refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of everyone. She took a slow breath and looked at Jessica. "I'm happy for you," Emily said quietly. "That's all that matters today." Instead of softening Jessica's heart, those words only made her smile even wider. "Oh, please," Jessica replied. "Don't pretend you're happy. Everyone knows you've always been jealous of me." Emily shook her head. "I've never been jealous." "No?" Jessica smirked. "Then explain why you're still working overtime while I'm marrying into one of the richest families in New York." The guests exchanged amused looks. Some nodded as if Jessica had won the argument. Others simply watched in silence, unwilling to interfere. Emily looked around the ballroom. Not a single person defended her. Not one. She remembered all the nights she had skipped dinner to save money for their mother's medication. She remembered taking extra shifts during holidays while everyone else celebrated with their families. She remembered sitting beside her mother's hospital bed after working 16-hour shifts. And through all those years, Jessica had never once asked if she needed help. Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. "I hope you have a wonderful life," she whispered. She turned, hoping to quietly walk away before anyone noticed the tears forming in her eyes. But Jessica grabbed her wrist. "Oh, don't leave yet." Emily slowly turned back. Jessica smiled sweetly, but there wasn't a trace of kindness in her eyes. I almost forgot. She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. Holding it between two fingers, she waved it in front of Emily before letting it drift toward the floor. If money's that tight, Jessica said with a laugh, consider this a wedding tip. The bill floated gently onto the polished marble floor. The ballroom fell completely silent. Jessica looked at Emily with a satisfied smile. Go ahead, she said. Pick it up. A few guests laughed nervously. Others looked away, clearly uncomfortable. Emily stared at the bill lying at her feet. For several long seconds. She didn't move. Her eyes slowly filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She had endured years of hardship. She had survived sleepless nights, endless work, and heartbreaking sacrifices. But she had never imagined her own sister would reduce her dignity to $100 bill. Very calmly, Emily looked Jessica in the eyes. I may not have your money, she said quietly, but I'll never have to buy my self-respect. Without touching the money, she turned and began walking toward the ballroom exit. The room was so quiet that the sound of her footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Jessica rolled her eyes. See, she said loudly to the crowd. Always so dramatic. More laughter followed. But before anyone could say another word, the massive doors at the entrance of the Grand Plaza suddenly swung open. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned toward the entrance. The hotel's general manager rushed inside, looking unusually nervous. Behind him walked several security officers dressed in black suits. And in the center of them all, a distinguished older man in an elegant navy blue suit entered the ballroom with calm confidence. The moment the hotel employees saw him, their expressions changed instantly. Several staff members straightened their posture. Others respectfully lowered their heads. The general manager himself hurried forward as if greeting royalty. A whisper spread through the ballroom like wildfire. That's David Wilson, the owner of the Grand Plaza. The billionaire himself. Jessica's eyes widened. A huge smile immediately spread across her face. She quickly adjusted her wedding dress and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. This is unbelievable, she whispered excitedly to her friends. He actually came to my wedding. Without wasting another second, Jessica hurried toward the billionaire, completely convinced that the most important man in the room had arrived to congratulate the bride. She extended her hand confidently. Mr. Wilson, she said with a dazzling smile, it's such an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for coming to celebrate our special day. But before she could finish her sentence, David Wilson walked straight past her without even acknowledging she was there. His eyes were fixed on only one person. Emily. Emily froze. She couldn't understand why one of the most powerful businessmen in America was looking directly at her. David Wilson's pace quickened. His bodyguard struggled to keep up as he crossed the ballroom without taking his eyes off her. The guests instinctively stepped aside, creating a path through the crowd. Jessica remained standing with her hands still stretched out in the air. Her confident smile slowly faded. Mr. Wilson, she called after him. He didn't even turn around. For the first time that evening, Jessica was completely invisible. Emily looked over her shoulder, wondering if there was someone standing behind her. There wasn't. David Wilson stopped only a few feet away. For a brief moment, he simply looked at her. His eyes filled with emotion. A gentle smile appeared on his face. Then, without saying a single word, he wrapped his arms around Emily. The entire ballroom gasped. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the photographers lowered their cameras in disbelief. Emily stood frozen. She had never met David Wilson. Or at least, she didn't think she had. After several seconds, David stepped back, his eyes shining with tears. My child. He whispered. I've been looking for you. Emily stared at him, completely confused. I'm sorry, she said nervously. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. David slowly shook his head. No. I could never mistake those eyes. They're exactly like your mother's. Emily's heart skipped a beat. My mother? David nodded. Her name was Sarah. The color drained from Emily's face. How do you know my mother? Before David could answer, Jessica hurried toward them. Mr. Wilson, she interrupted with an awkward laugh. I think there's been some misunderstanding. She's just my younger sister. She works here as an event supervisor. David slowly turned his head toward Jessica. His warm expression disappeared instantly. So, he said calmly. You're Jessica. Jessica smiled proudly. Yes. I'm the bride. David looked at her for several long seconds before asking a question that instantly made her uncomfortable. Did you just throw money at your own sister? Jessica's smile disappeared. The ballroom became deathly silent. It was only a joke, she replied, forcing a nervous laugh. A joke? David repeated. He glanced at the $100 bill still lying untouched on the marble floor. Then he looked back at Jessica. I've built hotels all over the world. I've met presidents, celebrities, and kings. But nothing disgusts me more than someone who humiliates another human being simply because they have less. Jessica's face turned pale. Several guests lowered their heads in embarrassment. David bent down, picked up the $100 bill, and quietly placed it back into Jessica's hand. Keep your money. It can never buy class. A few guests exchanged stunned glances. The same people who had laughed only moments earlier now stood speechless. David turned back to Emily. I'm sorry you had to go through this. Emily tried to hold back her tears. You don't have to apologize. I've gotten used to people judging me. David's eyes softened. No. You should never get used to being treated without dignity. He gently placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Then he turned toward the hotel's general manager. Is everything I heard about Emily true? The general manager immediately nodded. Yes, sir. Every word. Miss Emily has been one of the most dedicated employees we've ever had. She arrives before everyone else. She leaves after everyone else. She never complains. When other employees call in sick, she's the first to volunteer. She has personally solved problems that could have cost this hotel millions. And not once has she ever used anyone's name to gain special treatment. David smiled proudly. I knew she would. Jessica looked back and forth between them, completely confused. What is going on? She demanded. How do the two of you even know each other? David slowly faced the crowd. His voice became calm, but powerful enough for every person in the ballroom to hear. I believe everyone here deserves to know the truth. Every guest held their breath. The woman you mocked tonight. He looked proudly at Emily. Isn't just one of the finest employees this company has ever had. A long silence filled the ballroom. Then David spoke the words that changed everything. She is my niece. The room erupted with shocked gasps. The ballroom exploded into whispers. What did he just say? His niece? That's impossible. The guests looked from David Wilson to Emily and then back again, trying to make sense of what they had just heard. Jessica stood frozen. She laughed nervously. This has to be some kind of misunderstanding. She looked at Emily with disbelief. Emily, tell them something. He's obviously confusing you with someone else. Emily was just as stunned. She slowly shook her head. I don't understand any of this. David smiled gently. I know you don't. Because your mother wanted it that way. Emily's breathing became heavier. My mother? David nodded. Your mother, Sarah Wilson, was my younger sister. The room fell silent once again. Years ago, she fell in love with a man our family didn't approve of. My father was stubborn and proud. He gave her an impossible choice. He told her to leave the man she loved, or leave the Wilson family forever. David paused, the pain still visible in his eyes. She chose love. And that was the last day anyone in the family saw her. Emily felt tears filling her eyes. My mother never told me any of this. I know, David answered softly. She wanted you to grow up without carrying the burden of our family's mistakes. He looked toward the ceiling for a moment before continuing. I searched for Sarah for years. But every lead disappeared. By the time I finally found her. His voice cracked. She had already passed away. Emily covered her mouth. The memory of losing her mother came rushing back. She remembered sitting beside the hospital bed, holding her mother's hand until her final breath. She remembered promising that no matter how hard life became, she would never give up. David continued. When I learned she had a daughter, I promised myself I would find you. It wasn't easy. You had changed addresses several times. You worked 2 jobs. You stayed away from social media. You never asked anyone for help. Emily looked down. I didn't want pity. David smiled proudly. Exactly. And that's why I made a decision. The guests listened in complete silence. I instructed the management of this hotel never to tell you who I was. Several executives standing nearby nodded. I wanted to know who Emily really was. I wanted to see whether she would use the Wilson name, if she ever discovered it. He looked around the ballroom. But she never did. She earned every promotion through hard work. Every performance review described the same woman. Honest. Compassionate. Dependable. The first to arrive. The last to leave. A leader without asking for recognition. The hotel manager stepped forward. Sir, if I may. David nodded. The manager looked directly at the guests. 6 months ago, one of our largest corporate events almost turned into a disaster. The power system failed less than an hour before 500 international guests were due to arrive. Our senior managers panicked. But Emily stayed calm. She reorganized the entire event, coordinated every department, and personally solved problems throughout the night. The client was so impressed that they signed a 5-year contract with our company. The audience stared at Emily in amazement. She never told anyone she was responsible, the manager continued. When we offered her public recognition, she asked us to recognize her entire team instead. Several employees standing near the back of the ballroom smiled proudly. One waitress quietly wiped away a tear. That's who Emily really is. Jessica couldn't believe what she was hearing. No. She shook her head repeatedly. No, this can't be happening. She stepped closer to David. If she's really your niece, why would she work as an ordinary employee? David answered without hesitation. Because she wanted to earn success. Not inherit it. His words echoed through the silent ballroom. Then David reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and removed a dark blue envelope sealed with the Wilson Hospitality crest. He handed it to Emily. I've waited a long time to give this to you. Emily hesitated before accepting it. Her hands trembled as she slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a beautifully printed document. She looked at the first page. Then the second. Her eyes widened. I don't understand. David smiled warmly. You don't have to answer today. But beginning next month, I would like you to join Wilson Hospitality Group as Executive Vice President of Operations. The ballroom erupted in shock. You've already proven that you know how to lead. You've already proven that you know how to serve people with dignity. And one day, David looked at Emily with unmistakable pride. I hope you'll become the person who leads this company long after I'm gone. Emily stood speechless, unable to hold back her tears any longer. For the first time in years, someone wasn't rewarding her because of her family name. Someone was recognizing everything she had earned. Jessica's knees felt weak. The applause that had filled the ballroom only moments earlier now sounded distant. She looked around at the same guests who had laughed with her just minutes before. Not one of them was smiling now. Some refused to meet her eyes. Others looked at her with quiet disappointment. For the first time in her life, Jessica understood what it felt like to stand completely alone. She slowly turned toward Emily. I'm sorry. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Emily looked at her, saying nothing. Jessica took another step forward. I didn't know. David Wilson's expression hardened. You didn't know she was my niece. He paused. But you did know she was your sister. The words hit Jessica harder than any public humiliation ever could. Tears welled up in her eyes. I was wrong, she admitted. I cared too much about appearances. I cared about money, about status, about what people thought of me. She looked at Emily with genuine regret. And somewhere along the way, I forgot what family means. The ballroom remained silent. Jessica wiped away a tear. I remember when Dad died. You were only 19. You gave up college. You worked so Mom could afford her medicine. And what did I do? She lowered her head. I walked away. I told myself I deserved a better life. But the truth is. She looked at Emily again. I left you to carry everything by yourself. Emily's eyes filled with tears. For years, she had dreamed of hearing those words. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she wanted her pain to be acknowledged. Jessica slowly reached for Emily's hands. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm not even asking you to forgive me today. I just want you to know. I'm ashamed of the person I became. Emily looked at her sister for a long moment. Then she quietly spoke. You know what hurt the most? Jessica shook her head. It wasn't the jokes. It wasn't the money you threw on the floor. It wasn't even tonight. Emily took a slow breath. It was realizing that somewhere along the way, my own sister stopped seeing me as family. Jessica broke down in tears. I'm so sorry, Emily. I truly am. Emily gently squeezed her sister's hands. I forgive you. Jessica looked up in surprise. But forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It simply means I refuse to let the past control my future. Several guests quietly wiped tears from their eyes. Even members of the hotel staff became emotional. David Wilson smiled proudly. This, he said softly, is exactly why your mother would be proud of you. He turned to face everyone in the ballroom. I hope every person here remembers what happened tonight. He looked around the room. We spend our lives judging people by their clothes, their jobs, their bank accounts. But character cannot be bought. Integrity has no price. And true greatness is revealed by how you treat people who can offer you nothing in return. The room fell completely silent. I've built hotels worth billions of dollars, David continued. But tonight, I learned that the greatest treasure in my family isn't wealth. He placed a proud hand on Emily's shoulder. It's her. The ballroom erupted into applause. This time, the applause wasn't for a luxury wedding. It wasn't for expensive decorations. It wasn't for status or success. It was for kindness. For courage. For a young woman who had quietly sacrificed everything without expecting recognition. One by one, the hotel employees stepped forward. The waiters. The housekeepers. The reception staff. The chefs. Every person who had worked beside Emily applauded her with genuine respect. Many of them hugged her. Some thanked her for helping them through difficult days. Others shared stories of her generosity that no one else had ever known. Jessica watched it all with tears streaming down her face. For the first time, she understood something money could never buy. Respect isn't demanded. It's earned. As the music softly filled the ballroom once again, David turned to Emily. Are you ready? Emily smiled through her tears. For what? David smiled back. For the future your mother always dreamed you would have. Emily looked around the ballroom one final time. The place where she had been humiliated only minutes earlier had become the place where her life changed forever. She lifted her head. Not with pride, but with quiet confidence. And as she walked forward beside her uncle, every person in the room stood to their feet. Because sometimes, the strongest people aren't the ones born into wealth. They're the ones who choose kindness after surviving hardship. And on that unforgettable night at the Grand Plaza, everyone learned that the richest person in the room wasn't the one wearing the most expensive dress. It was the woman whose heart had never lost its dignity. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more amazing stories.